You're watching New York's very own Pix 11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
This past Wednesday, we paused once again to remember the nearly 3,000 people who were murdered on September 11th, 18 years ago. There are so many memories of that day, so many stories. And one of them is about the healing process, recovering from such catastrophic losses. And one of the stories is that an outgrowth of that day is a nonprofit organization known as Tuesday's Children, whose mission is providing a lifetime of healing for those whose lives have been forever changed by terrorism and traumatic loss. Terry Grace Sears is the executive director of Tuesday's Children, and I'm also joined by Mike and Dan Friedman. They're twin brothers whose father Andrew was killed on 9/11. Members of Tuesday's Children themselves, they have formed a sock company in honor of their hero father. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming in. Let's talk in the limited amount of time. Terry, over the past 18 years, the number I have, you've supported more than 27,000 people directly impacted by that terrorist attack 18 years ago.
Yeah,
what have you done?
So not only the 3,051 children who lost a parent on that day, but the surviving spouses we've supported, as well as the ripple effect of 9/11. Certainly the 9/11 responders, so many of them are sick. They say within a few years more will have died due to 9/11 related causes than died on that day. We also support, and this is a new initiative over the last 3 years, the Gold Star families, all those that answered the call post 9/11.
Now, you've gone global. I want to hear about that in a moment. But let me talk to Mike and Dan for a moment, because you were inspired, really, if word inspired is correct here, that you wanted to pay tribute to your father, and you came up with this idea of socks. You said in your family, socks represented hope. Would you explain that?
Yeah, so after September 11th, we were so devastated by the loss of our father, but our father taught us so many lessons about giving back and paying it forward. So in the immediate aftermath of September 11th, we went down to Manhattan and we gave out supplies to the first responders, firefighters, policemen who were assisting those in need down here in Manhattan. And one of those supplies was clean and dry socks. And so we didn't know it at the time, but those socks that would come to represent hope in our family was going to serve as the foundation for the business that we would start 16 years later.
And the company is called?
Tall Order.
Tall Order, appropriate. And you've got socks
with
you.
We
and I
brought
think
some
we
of
have
our
some
socks
video
with us
to show some of them. But the very important thing here is there's a symbol on every sock representing the World Trade Center.
Yes.
And the tragedy.
On the ankles of every sock, we have our logo, the Tall Order logo, and it is sky blue, which represented the clear blue sky that was on 9/11. And there's a subtle nod to the World Trade Center with the T. And the O connects the Tall Order, so we're rising above tragedy. And when you wear a pair of Tall Order socks, you're not only looking good, you're feeling good, but more important, doing good.
We knew we wanted to give back to Tuesday's Children for all that they did for us after we lost our father on 9/11. And so we donate 10% of our profits back to Tuesday's Children, and we're happy to say that by the end of the year we will have donated $30,000 to Tuesday's Children.
But you have grown so much in 18 years. It started off to be something local for those who survived 9/11, but you're now become a global organization.
Yes, so for the last 12 years, we have run a program called Project Common Bond, and we've involved 31 nations, young adults from 31 nations, all of whom who've lost a family member owing to terrorism or traumatic loss. And that program has allowed us to establish relationships with people all over the world that are doing the same thing as the 9/11 community, trying to move forward in a positive way after mass violence or traumatic loss.
These losses have left such a void in the hearts of those who lost loved ones. It's so difficult, even 18 years later, to heal. How do you deal with that? Do you deal with therapists? And what's your approach?
So what we do is create community with, there's strength in numbers. So everyone sort of, when something happens, we hear universally that people feel alone. There's a tendency to isolate. We bring families together and allow them to kind of normalize the experience and connect them to either our programs, which try to fill in a little bit for that loved one lost, or connect them with mental health professionals. We don't want this loss to define anyone or limit them. And like Dan and Mike, they take this traumatic loss and they're now using it for something in a real kind of positive way, something that allows them to turn this loss into something, really powerful.
Turning a negative into somewhat of a positive. And before we run out of time, I want to get put up on the screen, if we have that, Rowie, the organization. What's the website?
The website is tuesdayschildren.org. One word, www.tuesdayschildren.org.
And you rely on the donations, and you rely on people fitting into your socks.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And the contribution, get your website again?
Yes, that's www.tallorder.com.
And you're now also dealing with not only those who perished on that day, but all those years later, those who become ill, the first responders. You're reaching out and you're supporting them as well.
Yeah, so the responder families and the children are always welcome in our programs, and with so many deaths, it's 3 or 4 a week. We want to be there for those kids in the same way we've been for the 9/11 children.
But you're also, locally, you're reaching out to the areas which have really suffered through mass shootings in El Paso and
Yes.
Dayton. How do you do that?
Well, we're funded by the Department of Homeland Security and other foundations to share our lessons learned. We have a website called Tuesday's Children Heals, and there is a platform where these communities can understand how to, assess the population, how to fundraise, how to provide the long-term help. And it is always about long-term. As we see 18 years in 9/11, there's people that are still suffering. So being there for the long term, I think, is one of the keys to Tuesday's Children's success.
Now, you lost your father on 9/11, and it's a difficult process. Never see closure. But what guidance would you offer to others who had losses on that day and suffered what you did? How do you recover from that?
Well, what Terry and her group did for us, with the importance of never feeling alone. There will always be people there for you. And that to me is one of the biggest things that we had, is that we always had a support group, people that would come to us when we needed them. And we always said that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Well, there'll always be a way to overcome such tragedy and such sorrow and turn things from a negative into positive. And we've been able to do that not only with our socks, but the way we carry ourselves each and every day of our lives. And we credit our dad for teaching us those things. So those are the qualities and the values that we try to preach to others who are going through a similar situation, that you'll never be alone, and that there will always be a light at the end of the tunnel, and you will overcome.
A very poignant message. And before we go, one more time, name of your company and where they can find you on the web.
So the name of the company is Tall Order, and you can find us at www.tallorder.com.
And Tuesday's Children?
Tuesday'sChildren.org.
Well, Terry Sears and Mike and Dan Friedman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And that'll do it for our broadcast this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this program again, log on to our website at pix11.com/News Closeup. Coming up next, Greta Van Susteren and Full Court Press. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.